Hi folks, I'm Peter Lemieux with Rounding Third, and I tell baseball stories. I got a wonderful one for you today, and let me start off with a tease. During an 8-year period of time, this team had 14 Hall of Famers. And it's not the Yankees. That's my story, so let's get to it. As I like to tell baseball stories, and this is an old one, it goes back 90 years, it always intrigues me how what's going on in baseball mirrors what's going on in the United States of America. For most of baseball's history, it was the only sport. The other sports were not well organized, financed, and covered, but baseball was always there. So what would happen is what was going on in the United States reflected how baseball was played in some strange way. Example, the 1920s were a time of great economic success. World War I was over. We called them the Roaring Twenties. People spent to extravagance, probably too much, partied, had great times, and it's not insignificant that during the Roaring Twenties, the predominant team in baseball was the New York Yankees, because everything came in and out of New York. If you were in entertainment, there was no Hollywood. You went to New York, okay? Newspapers primarily, entertainment, finance, Wall Street. It was banking. It was all in and around New York City, and you had the Yankees. That ended in 1929 with the Great Depression. America changed. I don't know if we really understand today the significance of that change, but just a few statistics. Banks closed, and people lost their money. There was no FDIC. There was no federal government backup plans to help people who lost their jobs. And unemployment rose to a high of 25%. That's inconceivable. When we stress out at 6%, 25% no unemployment insurance. People lost their money, they lost their homes, they lost their jobs. And it went on for 10 years. This was not the Roaring Twenties anymore. So it is somewhat significant from the late 20s to the mid-30s, the significant baseball power came from another place. Let's just talk about baseball geography at that time. There were 16 teams. They were all in the northeast part of the United States. Those 16 teams resided in 10 cities because cities had multiple teams. Those 10 cities resided in only 8 states. Only 8 states had a major league team. The southernmost city was St. Louis, Missouri. The westernmost city was St. Louis, Missouri. If you made a baseball map, St. Louis would be almost like a satellite, way out west, way down south, compared to like Philly, Boston, New York, even Chicago, Washington. Those were all in the Northeast. And it was from St. Louis that we got the team that represents the Depression. The St. Louis Cardinals, over an 8-year period of time, went to 5 World Series. When the Yankees were at their glory in the 20s, they went to 6 World Series in 8 years. But this one replaced the Yankees, the St. Louis Cardinals. And what really made it entertaining is how this team was composed. They had a nickname called the Gashouse Gang, but they were shocking to the civility that people wanted in baseball. There's a writer named Frank Graham from the New York Sun who wrote these words about the St. Louis Cardinals. They don't look like a major league ball club, or as major league ball clubs are supposed to look in this era of well-dressed athletes. Their uniforms are stained and dirty, patched, ill-fitting. They don't shave before the game, and most of them chew tobacco. They spit it out of the sides of their mouths. They wipe the backs of their hands on their shirt fronts and don't wash their uniforms. Furthermore, they are afraid of nobody. This is a perfect team to represent the United States in the Depression, when people didn't have jobs, they didn't have food, and they were suffering. The guys on the St. Louis Cardinals mostly came from southern United States and had very little to no education. But they played the game very hard, and they just simply were not only a great team, they were very entertaining. Here's a few of their characters. Their player manager, Frankie Frisch, awful temper. One time, Frankie Frisch had an argument with an umpire, threw his hat on the ground, and jumped up and down on his own hat, shredding it. Here's the irony. His argument was believed by the umpire, and after he got done, the umpire ordered the whole game to be played over again because of Frankie Frisch's argument. Crazy. They had a shortstop named Leo Durocher, who was not a great player. He later went to the Hall of Fame as a manager. He had a temper. He would argue and not give up. Not only that, Leo did not mind a fist fight now and then if he had to do it. Their key players carried the craziest nicknames. There was Dizzy Dean, Daffy Dean, Ducky Medwick. Dizzy, Daffy, Ducky. That's kind of like Uncle Scrooge's three nephews here. They also had a guy named Pepper Martin. Oh, what about Pepper Martin? Pepper Martin was a hobo, riding on trains, tried out for the team and became a great baseball player. This is really something to watch these guys and be entertained with. Of course, we didn't have any television, so people only could read about them. Probably the player that most represents them and most wanted to represent them was their all-star pitcher, Dizzy Dean. Dizzy Dean was discovered in the South at the age of 18 picking cotton. And on the weekends, he would pitch for his town's baseball team. He was a good pitcher. The Cardinals tried him out, put him on the team, became an all-star, became a Hall of Fame pitcher. Dizzy Dean had an amazing personality. He was kind of like Muhammad Ali before Muhammad Ali in that he would brag. He would say, it ain't bragging if you can do it. He would predict victories. People came to the ballparks to either cheer against him or for him. In fact, when he was signed, he said, I'll put more people in the ballpark than Babe Ruth. And that's kind of Dizzy's personality. A lot of funny stories about Dizzy. One time he was pinch running in a game and a line drive hit him in the head. They'd take him to the hospital. They gave him an x-ray. And Dizzy said, they took an x-ray of my head. It's empty. They found out Dizzy only had a second grade education. Well, he didn't even finish second grade. He quit school in the second grade. When asked about that, he says, to tell you the truth, folks, I wasn't that good in first grade. And that's kind of Dizzy's personality. He had a magnanimous personality. He was funny, and he could pitch. When the season was over, Dizzy Dean was an entrepreneur. He, along with other players, organized exhibition games starting in California, would travel across the winter, travel across the country, mostly California and in the South, playing exhibition games against black players. And they all made money on this deal. And Dizzy was one of the leaders in that enterprise. Another story about the Gashouse Gang. In 1930, every player on their team with over 300 at-bats batted over 300. 1934, the year I'm talking about. St. Louis Cardinals, Gashouse Gang, make it to the World Series and win the World Series in 7 games. When the World Series is over, Dizzy Dean won 2 games. Daffy Dean, his brother, won 2 games with a combined earned run average of 148. One time during a doubleheader, Dizzy pitched the first game, a shutout victory, and his brother, Daffy, followed up by pitching a no-hitter. To which Dizzy said, "If I'd have known he was going to pitch a no-hitter, I'd have pitched one too." That was Dizzy Dean. However, in 1930, Dizzy Dean won 30 games. And he's the last National League pitcher to ever do that. This was a team that there are books written about them. There's lots of stories about them. I just wanted to give you a flavor for this team that took over baseball for 8 years with their personality, their style, and their competitiveness. Game 7, 1934, played in Detroit. The Cardinals go out and just slaughter the Tigers. 7th inning, they're ahead 9-0. Ducky Medwick tries to take third, and in his usual competitive style, slides into the third baseman, spikes high, spikes the guy, and injures him. And the fans have had it with the Cardinals. They're disgusted with them. When the Cardinals take the field in the 8th inning, they won't let the game go on. They fill the field with anything they had. There was fruit, eggs, lots of bottles, cushions, anything they had, they were throwing it on the field. The commissioner of baseball, Judge Landis, was at the game, called a timeout, and insisted that Ducky be removed from the game. Or they didn't know how they could play. So Ducky left the game, they cleaned it up, and they won the game 11-0. Now, it just so happens that Ducky at the time had 11 hits in that series, which was tying the Major League record for hits in a World Series. He never got another at-bat. So after the game, they asked Ducky about, wow, he didn't get a chance. He said, I didn't mind them taking me out of the game. I just don't understand where they got all that food and groceries into a baseball game, and why did they bring it? Well, that's kind of the personality that was St. Louis Cardinals. One question remains in my story. Why were they called the Gashouse Gang? As far as I can tell, Dizzy Dean bought a gas station. And when the players had nothing to do, not much money, they would go down and hang out at Dizzy's gas station. And that's where the Cardinals could be seen and found, just sitting around telling stories and doing what you do in your spare time. Therefore, they got the name, the Gashouse Gang. One of the great baseball teams in baseball history. Perfect team for this Depression era we were in, filled with personalities. I hope you enjoyed the story. We got a lot more coming up in the future. If you have ideas or stories you've heard about the Gashouse Gang, let us hear it. As always, it's great being with you, and I'll see you next time at Rounding Third.